Hey guys, tonight we ride not in a car, not on a bike, but tucked into the scratchy wool saddle of a Mongol pony. There's no engine, no suspension, and absolutely no cup holders, just you, the wind, and the kind of vast rolling grasslands that make your couch feel tragically landlocked. The sky above is open enough to lose your worries in, and the horizon, it never stops moving. You're not just traveling through space, you're gliding across centuries, stepping into the saddle-bound soul of a people who believed that to lie down was to fall behind. Now, fair warning, you probably wouldn't survive this lifestyle. Beds, optional. Pillows, don't make me laugh. Mongols preferred sleeping on the go, using their horses not just for transport, but as beds, heaters, and occasionally dinner. You'd better be ready to embrace the earthy smell of horse sweat and the feel of wind-chapped lips. Cozy, right? So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments, where are you listening from? And what time is it there? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You sit tall in your saddle as dawn breaks over the steppe. There's a moment of pause, just wind, a sky, and the gentle creak of leather as your pony shifts beneath you. It's not luxurious, but strangely, it's enough. The Mongols didn't invent the horse, but they may as well have. To be born a Mongol meant bonding with your horse before you could form full sentences. Your first steps, taken in stirrups. Your first bed, a folded woolen coat, if that. Your horse is short and stocky, not exactly the stallion you imagined, but it's tough, so tough it can outrun exhaustion and ignore icy winds that would make your average stall horse weep quietly into its oats. Mongol ponies were closer to wild horses than to our pampered modern breeds. Compact, clever, and incredibly independent, these animals thrived on scrubby grasses and minimal fuss. You nudge your mount forward, and it responds without needing a rein. That's another thing, Mongol horses were trained to move by touch and subtle body shifts. You could sleep in the saddle and still wake up in the right province. This was not just a convenience, it was survival. With distances measured in weeks and no rest stops in sight, the ability to nap while riding was both a flex and a necessity. Now imagine this. You're covering 30 to 40 miles in a day, often more. There's no asphalt, just undulating terrain and the occasional startled marmot. When night falls, you don't pitch a tent or inflate an air mattress. You hop off, stretch a little, and maybe use your saddle as a pillow. But honestly, most nights, you just stayed on your horse. Why? Because horses radiate warmth. On bitter nights, Mongols would huddle around their mounts like furry radiators. A fresh horse was sometimes warmer than a campfire, and less likely to burn your socks. And speaking of socks, you're not really wearing any. You've got felt boots, maybe lined with sheep's wool, and they've probably seen better days. Historians still argue whether this deep connection with horses emerged purely from practicality, or if there was a deeper cultural reverence baked into daily life. The answer is probably both. In Mongol cosmology, the horse was a sacred bridge between worlds, physical, spiritual, and military. The bond wasn't just practical, it was spiritual. A man without a horse was, to put it lightly, out of luck. You ride alongside others now, some singing softly to their animals, others silent, their bodies rocking in rhythm. No one seems to miss the idea of a mattress. Comfort comes in different forms out here. The way your horse dips its head to drink, the warmth of its body as you lean forward to rest your face against its neck. Did you know Mongols had multiple remounts, sometimes 5 or more? That meant when one horse tired, you simply switch saddles. This system wasn't just clever, it was unstoppable. It allowed Mongol messengers to cover over 200 miles a day, a record that wouldn't be broken until trains came along. And yes, some poor souls likely tried napping during those sprints. The horses didn't mind. They just kept running. Occasionally, you pass small herds of unattended ponies. They're not wild, they belong to someone. Every Mongol family had dozens. Branding was the only way to tell them apart, and even then, it was mostly the horses who kept track of each other. You get the sense that the horses are running the show out here, and the humans are just tagging along. A random gust of wind kicks up, and you squint against the dust. There's no escape from the elements, not even a hedge to cower behind. You glance at your saddlebag. Inside, dried meat, some mare's cheese, and a spare bowstring. No blanket, no pillow. Still, you know that when night comes, you'll curl up beside your horse, tucking your hands beneath its belly for warmth. It's Not a bed, but by mid-morning, your stomach reminds you that even steppe warriors need to eat. And out here, everything revolves around the horse, including breakfast. You slow your pony near a cluster of gears, those domed, felt-covered tents scattered like mushrooms on the plain, and follow the scent of smoke and something tangy into the heart of Mongol cuisine. Now, you won't find toast or scrambled eggs here. What you will find is air-egg fermented mare's milk. It looks suspiciously like runny yogurt, smells a bit like sour beer, and tastes, well, you'll see. A woman ladles it into a wooden bowl and hands it to you with a proud smile. You take a sip. It fizzes on your tongue like it can't decide if it wants to be cheese or champagne. It's sharp, a little funky, and wildly popular. Air-egg isn't just a beverage, it's a lifestyle. Mongol families move their gears seasonally just to follow the horses and ensure good milk. Mares are milked multiple times a day, which might sound like a spark gig for the horse, until you realize the milking process involves tying the foal nearby so the mare relaxes enough to let down milk. It's teamwork. Mildly awkward teamwork, but it works. Then there's the cheese. Mongol cheese isn't creamy or melty. It's rock hard, sun-dried, and capable of chipping a tooth if you are not careful. You gnaw on a corner like you're trying to impress someone, but inside, you're dreaming of brie. Still, it's rich in protein and lasts for months, ideal for nomads with no refrigerators and no patience for spoiled food. As you chew, you notice a child licking fat from a bone the size of a forearm. That's because meat is another pillar of the Mongol diet, mostly mutton, goat, and occasionally, yes, horse. Horses weren't just trusted companions. They were also dinner. When the cold bit hard and food ran scarce, even the most loyal pony might become stew. That said, eating horse wasn't unlikely. It carried spiritual weight. Rituals had to be followed. The meat was boiled plain, seasonings weren't a thing, and the bones cleaned with almost reverent thoroughness. Mongols didn't waste. Everything had a purpose. Tendons became bowstrings. Manes could be woven into rope. Even the tail hair might be used in musical instruments or ceremonial hats. You shift uncomfortably on a low stool made of rawhide stretched over wood. It squeaks. The floor is packed dirt. There's no table, just a wide, shallow bowl in the middle of the room, surrounded by family members sharing slivers of dried meat and gossiping in low voices. A baby giggles nearby, gnawing on a strip of sinew. You smile, trying to look casual while failing to chew cheese that could double as construction material. Outside, the ponies graze peacefully. They're never far. Even during meals, Mongols glance toward their horses like suburbanites checking their phones. It's a reflex. The horse isn't just a ride, it's your livelihood, your milk supply, your alarm system, and sometimes, yes, your mattress. Speaking of alarms, Mongol horses are impressively alert. They can sense changes in wind, spot wolves in the dark, and even recognize individual human voices. You're not sure your pillow at home could do that. Historians still argue whether Mongols domesticated horses for milk or for meat, or vice versa. The truth is probably blurred. Both uses were essential, but the fact that fermented mare's milk was not only consumed but celebrated gives you a hint at just how important horses were in daily life. You're not just drinking breakfast. You're participating in a centuries-old tradition that defines identity, community, and even mattered. A soft belch escapes someone across the tent. No one bats an eye. You've learned quickly that in Mongol culture, this is not rude. In fact, it might be the closest thing to a Yelp review. Feeling adventurous, you accept a chunk of bulsuk deep-fried dough, golden and oddly sweet, despite being made without sugar. Paired with salty cheese and sour milk, it somehow balances out, like the land itself, harsh, strange, and yet oddly harmonious. You wipe your hands on your deal, the long robe worn by almost everyone here, and step back outside into the wind. Your pony lifts its head and whinnies softly, clearly ready to move. You can't help but grin. You've only been off the saddle for half an hour, and already it feels like too long. Funny, isn't it? In a world without beds, the horse becomes your center of gravity, your table, your transport, your food source, and occasionally your reluctant dinner. You might not sleep well tonight, but you'll sleep full. And a full stomach on the steppe is better than a feather mattress in a castle. The sun is climbing higher now, casting long shadows from the grazing animals. You gather your reins and pat your pony's thick neck, grateful it doesn't hold a grudge for the breakfast betrayal committed against one of its cousins. Your body sways instinctively as the horse moves beneath you, and you settle in for the next stretch of your journey. Out here, meals don't last long. But you duck your head to enter the yurt or ger, as the Mongols call it, and immediately feel the difference. Outside, the wind still howls across the steppe, tugging at your deal like a child trying to pick a fight. Inside, it's dim, warm, and smells like smoke, mutton fat, and worn leather. Comforting, in a wild sort of way. But don't get too excited, this isn't your sleep number suite. This is a place of survival, not luxury. The floor is packed dirt, covered with layers of felt rugs that have seen things. At the center stands a low iron stove, puffing out wood smoke that escapes through a hole at the top of the tent. If you're sitting in the wrong spot, you will catch the full fury of that smoke in your eyes. Don't say I didn't warn you. You look around. There's no bed in sight. No frame, no mattress, no pile of decorative pillows that serve no discernible purpose. What you have is a rolled up sheepskin, a bundle of your own clothes for a pillow, and perhaps if you're feeling indulgent, a thick horsehair blanket. Mongols didn't build separate sleeping areas. Everyone bedded down wherever there was room. Family, visitors, maybe a goat or two if the weather was bad. You find a patch near the stove and stretch out, but there's a bump in the rug the size of a potato. You shift, then shift again. That's when you realize Mongol sleep isn't about being perfectly still. It's about flowing with the space, like wind across grass. You're not meant to sprawl. You curl, you tuck, you adapt. And when you finally doze off, it's not into some dream of springy mattresses and lavender-scented linen. It's into the kind of sleep that comes after 10 hours in a saddle and a belly full of boiled mutton. Now, let's talk temperature. The ger is a marvel of insulation when set up properly, but the steppe doesn't care. Nights drop fast, and warmth becomes a group project. You share your sleeping space with siblings, cousins, and the occasional guard dog who's earned a spot by not barking at the moon all night. Your pony? He's tied outside, but close enough that you can hear him snort softly when he dreams. That's right, horses dream. Mongol herders have long believed that their horses remember past lives, and that during deep sleep, they sometimes gallop across unseen fields. Whether that's true or just smoke from the stove getting to your head, you can't say. But it's comforting. In a strange way, you curl tighter under your sheepskin as the fire flickers lower. A child murmurs in their sleep. Someone shifts and coughs. Outside, the wind picks up again. It rattles the felt walls, searching for a seam to sneak through. But inside, the ger holds steady. Cozy, yes, but far from what you'd call restful by modern standards. No blackout curtains, no weighted blankets, and definitely no white noise machines unless you count the persistent creak of the stovepipe. Still, you begin to understand why Mongols didn't obsess over beds. Their lives were fluid, mobile. Everything was temporary, adaptable. The idea of setting up a permanent bed, with posts and slats and a matching comforter set, was about as practical as building a sandcastle in a dust storm. Historians still argue whether Mongol sleeping arrangements were dictated more by cultural norms or sheer necessity. Did they prefer hard sleeping surfaces, or was it simply all they had? Either way, generations adapted. Even today, in some rural parts of Mongolia, you'll find families sleeping much as their ancestors did with the same rolled sheepskins, the same proximity to smoke, and the same stoic acceptance that comfort is a luxury, not a guarantee. One quirky detail you might appreciate. Gers are always set up with spiritual symmetry. The door faces south, the sacred altar is to the north, and sleeping spots follow an invisible hierarchy. Guests get the west, elders sleep near the altar, and the east, reserved for men and weapons. You, dear traveller, have found yourself somewhere in the middle, which is just fine for someone still figuring out where to put their boots without causing offense. You shift again and catch sight of your saddle propped against the wall. It's more than tack, it's your headboard, your chair, and maybe, if tonight gets especially cold, your windscreen. Some Mongols used to keep a bridle under their sleeping mats, just in case they had to mount and ride before sunrise. Beds don't let you bolt into battle. Saddles do. You close your eyes again. The fire pops. Your neighbor snores. A baby fusses and is quickly hushed. And just when you think you're drifting off, someone opens the flap to step outside and lets in a gust of frigid air that freezes time itself. You exhale. Sleep will come eventually. Maybe, but now you begin to see the quiet genius of this world. The ger is not restful, but it's safe. The floor is not soft, but it's familiar. And the horse outside, tied with a felt rope and covered in frost. That horse is waiting. The sun hasn't even cleared the edge of the steppe, and already there's movement outside. You rub your eyes and sit up groggily, unsure whether you slept for 2 hours or 10. Either way, your back is voting for a chiropractor. Someone's stoking the fire. A kettle whistles like it's in a hurry. And outside, you hear the familiar whinny and snot of ponies getting restless. Time to saddle up again, daughter. As you shuffle outside, you spot them children, some barely taller than the horses. They ride, already galloping in loose loops around the camp. It's equal parts adorable and terrifying. One kid, maybe 5 years old, is standing on his saddle like a circus performer while chewing what looks like dried meat. Another is racing a dog. The dog is losing. Mongols didn't just use horses, they grew up on them. Literally. Before a Mongol child could write their name, they could ride. It wasn't considered a skill so much as a birthright. Ponies were playmates, babysitters, transportation, and the occasional stepladder. Forget training wheels. These kids were learning balance and battle tactics by the time most modern children are still figuring out juice boxes. Your guide today is a teenager named Odril. He's got a quiet swagger, the kind that comes from riding before breakfast every day of your life. His saddle is carved wood, stiff as a bench, and his stirrups are high. You try to copy his style, but mostly just end up pinching your thighs. In places no thigh should be pinched. He notices. He laughs softly. You're already his favorite story to tell around the fire tonight. As you ride together. He tells you mostly through gestures and a few translated phrases how his family's herd numbers close to 300 head. That sounds enormous until you remember that Mongol herders rely on quantity. One horse isn't enough. You need backups, each trained and conditioned for different weather, terrain, and moods. If one throws you off, the next might carry you into battle. Or to lunch. You pass a group of kids practicing with bows from horseback. The targets, straw bundles tied to posts. The speed, faster than you're comfortable watching. You blink and an arrow thunks into a bullseye. Mongol horse archery wasn't just for show, it was life. A trained warrior could fire multiple arrows in a single breath while riding at full gallop. And they didn't need reins, they steered with their knees, which left their hands free to pull arrows from their quiver and deliver swift, silent chaos. Historians still argue whether Genghis Khan's military dominance came more from brilliant strategy or his soldiers' superhuman horsemanship. But let's be honest, when your troops can sleep, eat, and do precision archery from the back of a moving animal, you've got a bit of an edge. Odril shows you how to pick out your horse in a herd not by color, but by feel. Mongols didn't name their horses so much as know them. Each had a distinct personality, gait, and rhythm. You watch him whistle once, then again, and his pony trots over like a loyal dog. You try the same whistle. Your horse glances at you, snorts, and resumes. Chewing grass, there's no shame. It takes a lifetime to build that kind of bond. You continue riding, and the rhythm lulls you. It's hypnotic, the gentle jolt of each step, the steady rise and fall, the warm creak of leather beneath you. Out here, where the earth rolls in waves and the sky never ends, it feels natural to never stop. Beds, those are for people who plan to stay in one place, and staying put isn't very Mongol. One old herder you pass is riding with his eyes closed. You do a double take. He's not dead, just napping, sitting upright, at a slow trot. Apparently, that's a thing. Mongol riders could nap in the saddle while their horses followed the herd or trailed the scent of campfires. Some even developed what you might call a saddle snooze, a light doze, legs locked around the pony's belly, head tilted slightly to avoid whiplash. It wasn't deep sleep, but it was enough. You try it yourself. Grip with the thighs. Relax the shoulders. Let your head dip gently forward. Nope. You nearly fall off. Odril catches your elbow. Chuckling. Later, he says. After lunch. But you can see how it works. When you spend your entire life in motion, the saddle becomes your second spine. Mongols didn't need beds because they were their own sleeping systems, bodies trained to take rest in moments, in bursts, in rhythm with the land beneath there. Horses' hooves. That's the secret no mattress company wants to hear. Comfort isn't about softness. It's about balance. You pass a shallow creek, and the horses drink while Odril stretches out on his back atop a smooth boulder. You join him briefly. The rock is hard. The sky is endless. And suddenly, you feel something resembling peace. There's a wind that never stops blowing out here. A quiet that isn't silence, but spaciousness. And in that wind, in that space, you understand why Mongols didn't build beds. They didn't need to. Their sleep traveled with them on 4 legs. Through time, across a landscape too big to tame, you open your eyes. Odril's already mounted again. He offers you. By late afternoon, the air has shifted. It's quieter now. not because the step has hushed, but because everything has found its rhythm. The horse's hooves beat a steady pulse against the earth, and you feel yourself swaying gently, caught between wakefulness and dreams. This isn't a dramatic gallop, it's a lullaby, and that's the trick. You're moving, but you're also drifting. The Mongols mastered this strange state long ago. You glance around and notice other riders with their heads tilted forward, eyes half-lidded, their bodies moving perfectly in sync with their mounts. They aren't chatting. They aren't alert. They're dozing, and somehow their ponies just know what to do. You're witnessing one of the most underappreciated skills in history, the mobile nap. Mongol riders could stay in the saddle for days at a time, catching sleep in microdoses while their herds moved or their patrols stretched across the vast wilderness. It wasn't deep, REM cycle dreaming, but it was enough. Your horse moves beneath you like a furry hammock, and for a fleeting second, you understand. The warmth, the rhythm, the trust. It's weirdly relaxing. The secret to this wasn't magic. It was partnership. Mongol horses weren't just mounts, they were teammates. These animals learned the routines. They recognized familiar trails, reacted to weather shifts, and even avoided obstacles with minimal input from their half-conscious riders. If you think cruise control is impressive, try a horse that dodges prairie dog holes while you snore upright. The bond between rider and horse was so strong that Mongols often let their animals pick the path. At night, this became a survival tactic. If a dust storm hit, or if visibility dropped to near zero, they'd trust the horse to find its way to camp or, at least, shelter. The rider would loosen the reins, tuck in for warmth, and let instinct lead the way. It sounds risky, but when you've grown up together, the kind of trust feels natural. Historians still debate whether this instinct was truly learned or bred over generations. Some say the Mongol pony simply adapted through exposure. Others argue that selective breeding favored horses with better navigational sense. Either way, the result was uncanny. Thousands of semi-autonomous, self-correcting transport units. With mares, you lean forward and rest your cheek briefly on the course, hairs of your pony's neck. It smells of dust and sun-warmed leather, and the heat radiating from its body is better than any heated blanket. Mongols often did this, hugged their horses during cold rides or rested against them while half asleep. The saddle was designed to keep you upright even when your mind wandered. No recline function, sadly, but you didn't need one. Now picture this. A Mongol rider galloping across enemy territory, bow in hand, armor rustling, and in between volleys of arrows, nodding off. Not from laziness, but from efficiency. Time wasted sleeping on the ground was time the enemy could regroup. So instead, they napped while moving. Just 5 minutes here, 10 there, enough to keep the edge sharp. You try again. You close your eyes, loosen your grip, and let your body roll with the pony's motion. It's hypnotic. The wind brushes your cheeks. The saddle creaks softly. Your breathing slows. You imagine this going on for hours. No phone, no noise, no traffic. Just you and a four-legged lullaby. There's something strangely spiritual about this practice. Mongols believed that dreams could travel with the wind, and that the step carried memories from one rider to the next. Napping in the saddle wasn't just a convenience, it was a communion with the land. Sleep was never separate from the journey. It was the journey. You jolt slightly as your pony stumbles over a rock, and the spell breaks, but you don't mind. You are not exactly rested, but you're calm. You've tapped into a tradition older than most empires, one that sees sleep not as a full stop, but a comma, a pause between actions. Ahead, you spot a lone herder standing on a rise, silhouetted against the setting sun. He doesn't wave, he just watches his herd, still as a stone, while his horse grazes nearby. You wonder if he's been standing there for hours, or if he just woke from a saddle nap of his own. A thought strikes you. Out here, no one ever really stops. The horses keep grazing, the wind keeps blowing, and the people, well, they rest, but they don't pause. Their sleep, like everything else, flows with the land. As the sun dips lower, your guide gestures to a rise just ahead. Camp tonight will be near a cluster of willows beside a shallow stream, not a bed in sight. But you already knew that. You dismount, stretch your legs, and glance at the horizon. It's easy to understand now why beds never quite caught on here. You settle near the willow grove, brushing away the brittle grasses to find a spot slightly less lumpy than the rest. There's no ceremony. You just drop where you are, your pony tethered nearby, still chewing like it owns the place. The sun is bleeding into the horizon now, throwing long, golden shadows across the camp. It's beautiful, peaceful, Even, but don't get too cozy because tonight, like every other night on the steppe, you're sleeping with your bow dot and oh really. It's right there beside you. For the Mongol warrior, a bed was a luxury, a bow was life. And so when it came to packing for battle or for a 1,000-mile ride through enemy territory, comfort items were out. Instead, you carried what mattered: your bow, your arrows, a spare string, a small knife, maybe some dried curds, and if you were feeling wild, a flint to light a fire. Everything else, extra. Your saddle wasn't just for riding, it was your suitcase, your kitchen shelf, and your emergency headrest. The wooden frame was high-backed, hard as old regrets, and doubled as protection during clashes. You could even loop a rope through the stirrups and drag it behind you like a makeshift sled if a horse was wounded. Beds? Try improvising with what you've got. You glance at your gear. It's modest, and by modest, I mean wildly inadequate. Your quiver jingles faintly as you shift. You imagine trying to sneak through enemy terrain with that kind of racket. Mongol archers knew better. Their gear was wrapped in felt, strapped close, and worn like a second skin. Every item was placed for instant use. No fumbling in the dark. No rummaging through a backpack the size of a mini fridge. If you needed it was right there. Or you didn't need it. Tonight, you watch a warrior unwind his bowstring and cradle his bow like it's a sleeping child. These composite weapons were works of art, layers of wood, horn, and sinew, expertly glued and bent into a curve of destruction. Storing them unstrung helped preserve the tension. You do the same, clumsily. Your fingers stick to the sinew. Your neighbor chuckles and corrects your grip. Apparently, you just committed the historical equivalent of flossing with your shoelaces. The camp around you is quiet now. Fires are kept small, smoke attracts attention. Everyone beds down in full gear. Boots on, blades nearby. You feel a little silly lying on the hard ground in your bulky deal. One hand on your saddlebag, the other brushing the curve of your bow. But then again, this is how Mongol armies conquered continents. They didn't stop. They didn't unpack. They just adapted. Historians still argue whether this bare-bones approach was driven by strategy or scarcity. Were Mongols minimalists by choice or by necessity? It's a little of both. Resources on the steppe were sparse. You didn't waste time or energy hauling furniture when you could haul arrows. But there was also pride in being light, fast, untethered. Comfort was for the weak. Real warriors carried their homes on horseback. A few feet away, you notice someone using their saddle as a pillow. Not in the cuddly, flush surface way, but with their head propped on the leather edge like they're trying to nap on an armrest during a delayed flight. It looks miserable. It is miserable, but it works. The logic is this: if you're ever ambushed in the night, you're already halfway to mounted and gone. Try that with a bed frame. Your pony snorts gently, tail flicking. Horses sleep standing. Up, mostly. They lock their knees and drift off while keeping one ear tuned to danger. You envy that. Mongols believed their horses could sense spirits, misfortune, and sometimes even the weather before it happened. You're not saying that's true, but your horse just shifted to face the wind like it knows something's coming. You pull your blanket tighter, just in case the stars begin to pepper the sky. The fire pops softly. Someone sings a low song, maybe a lullaby, maybe a prayer. It's hard to tell where ritual ends and routine begins out here. Everything folds into everything else. Your bow becomes your security. Your saddle becomes your mattress. Your horse is both your heater and your silent alarm. And sleep is not a ritual. It's a pause, a temporary truce with the elements. You lie back and stare at the sky. The Milky Way arches overhead in a glittering river. No tent roof, no rafters, just space. You understand now how this emptiness could be a kind of comfort. No walls, no soft duvets, but no limits either. Before you drift off, your hand finds the curve of your bow again, just to make sure. Not because you're afraid, but because it feels right. Like a bedtime story made of tension and tendon, holding the memory of every battle and every hunt before you. This step doesn't cradle you. It doesn't soothe. It challenges. It invites you to sleep with one eye open. The next morning begins with a song not from a person, but from the horses. There's a soft chorus of slots, stamping hooves, and the occasional, exaggerated yawn from your pony, who somehow looks more rested than you. You stretch bones, creaking like an old door, and rise from your not-so-deluxe patch of ground. It's time for what might be the most sacred routine in Mongol daily life. Checking on the herd. You shuffle over, wiping sleep from your eyes, and spot a few herders already moving between the animals. One carries a coil of felt rope, another gently rubs a horse's cheek while murmuring something in a low, rhythmic tone. This isn't just morning chores, it's a ritual. Every horse must be accounted for, examined, soothed. Even the grumpy ones. You help gather the remounts. Mongols typically rotated between several horses each day, riding one while others rested, grazed, or rolled in the dirt like shaggy rugs with attitude. This system gave their armies unbelievable range and stamina. It also meant that a fair bit of time each day was spent managing your mobile fleet of hooves and opinions to keep horses from wandering. Mongols used hobbling, tying a felt or leather rope between the front legs. Not to tie it, just enough to discourage a full gallop. Think of it as the ancient version of airplane mode. The horse can move, but not fast enough to disappear overnight. Still, they're clever. One pony nearby is already testing the limits of its rope by doing a slow-motion sideways shuffle toward a particularly tasty-looking shrub. You grab a length of rope and start your own hobbling attempt. The pony lifts its leg in protest and gives you the equine equivalent of a side eye. You are not bonding yet. Eventually, with the help of an amused elder, you manage a reasonably respectful knot. It holds. For now, singing is part of this process too. Low, soothing melodies meant to calm the herd. Some herders believe the horses understand the words. Others say it's just the tone, the sense of presence. Either way, it works. Even your squirrely mare quiets under the sound of a lullaby that's probably older than any kingdom you've ever read about. Historians still argue whether these songs had practical commands embedded within them, secret signals to guide behavior, or if they were simply a way to soothe both horse and human. The answer, of course, is likely both. In a world with no clocks, no screens, and no to-do lists, rhythm ruled everything. The sound of your voice could be more powerful than reins. One quirky detail: Mongols were known to tether horses in precise formations. Not randomly. There were favored pairings, social rankings, even temperamental considerations. That's stubborn. Pre-gelding. He can't be tied next to the flashy bay unless you're in the mood for an all-night bite fest. Managing the herd meant managing drama. High school cafeterias have nothing on Mongol pasture politics. And here's the thing: every horse had a place, but also a voice. Mongols didn't just look for signs of illness or lameness. They listened. A change in whinny, a different snort, the flick of an ear, it all meant something. You were still working on horse as a second language, but it's growing on you. You walk the line, feeling a sense of rhythm in the work. The earth is still cold beneath your feet, but the sun is rising. Its light stretches across the grass like melted gold. You pause to watch a young foal trying to chase its own tail. It fails, of course, but it looks delighted anyway. Life here is demanding but not joyless. There's a moment when you catch your reflection in a water basin. Your face is sunburned, wind-dried, and slightly smudged with horsehair, but you look content. Strange, isn't it? How quickly this life creeps in, how natural it starts to feel to wake, stretch, and immediately check whether your main source of warmth, transport, and companionship has tried to wander off toward the horizon. You look out over the herd, dozens, maybe hundreds of horses. No fences, no stables, just movement managed by hands, ropes, and trust. It's not perfect. Ponies still argue, ropes still fray, but it works. Like everything else here, it works. And you realize that when Mongols slept near their horses, when they tethered them with felt, sang to them, and woke to check their breath in the cold dawn, it wasn't just logistics. It was love, a partnership so deep that even rest itself became a shared experience. You gather your own mount, who has now wrapped her rope around a bush in a deeply artistic knot. You free her, pat her flank, and she gives a single snort of approval. You're getting better at this. With the herd calm and the morning sun warming your back, it's time to ride again. But now, each hoofbeat feels more familiar, more like a heartbeat. You're not. You barely remember falling asleep, which is odd, considering you were mid-raid. One moment, you're galloping through a low valley, the cold air sharp in your lungs, and the next your eyes flutter open to the rhythm of hoofbeats. Yeah, still in motion, still upright. Somehow, your horse carried you several miles while you lightly dozed in the saddle. Welcome to the fine Mongol tradition of battle nap start. It sounds absurd sleeping while riding, but for the Mongols, it was a practical necessity. With sprawling distances, limited resources, and military campaigns that spanned thousands of kilometers, stopping for a cozy nap just wasn't an option. You rode until you couldn't, and then you rode some more. The trick you learn is trust. Your mount knows the way, the terrain, and your subtle body cues. You, in turn, Learn to balance instinctively, slumping into a half dream while the horse keeps you from tumbling into a gopher hole. It's not exactly restful, but it's better than nothing. You pass a line of warriors doing the same, heads bobbing gently, reins looped loosely around wrists, expressions locked somewhere between deep in thought and napping through. A staff meeting. They call this form of travel elu, moving in relays, switching mounts and riders, conserving energy by resting in motion. Mongol armies could cover 100 miles in a day using this method, which, if you're curious, is several dozen beds worth of distance. Not that you'll be seeing a bed anytime soon, historically. This system helped Genghis Khan and his successors conquer more land faster than any empire in history. Modern scholars still argue whether the Mongols' uncanny mobility was their biggest strength, or whether their psychological warfare and logistics mattered more. Honestly, from your saddle's vantage point, mobility gets your vote. Now here comes the quirky part. Battle naps weren't just for getting from point A to B. Sometimes they occurred mid-attack. Yes, actual warfare. The Mongols had such tight formation control and flexible tactics that some soldiers could nap in the saddle while others took over, rotating like a sleepy but highly lethal carousel. The element of surprise wasn't just about time, it was about timing. They could strike at night, at dawn, or after 3 days of continuous travel when the enemy assumed they'd surely need a break. You approach a small river crossing and notice how the formation shifts. No shouted commands, just a wave of subtle gestures and shared experience. Your pony takes a shallow path, barely splashing. You smile, remembering the foot-wide streams you once found intimidating. Now you cross rivers in your sleep totter as night falls again. The group halts. There's no camp, not really, just a moment, where horses are watered, arrows checked, and everyone settles into a kind of organized sprawl. You chew on a strip of dried mutton that tastes like it's been stored in someone's boot, because it probably has, then lean back against your horse's flank. She doesn't flinch. She knows the drill. You overhear a quiet joke about one soldier who once dozed off and missed an entire ambush. Didn't matter, someone says. His horse handled it. You're not sure if they're joking. You also hear tales of step time, the warped, dreamlike flow that Mongols experience during extended campaigns, when days blur and nights dissolve, and all that matters is the rhythm of hooves, of breath, of wind. It's not unlike what you feel now. Your senses stretched, narrowed, focused entirely on the moment and the motion. You glance at the stars. They shimmer overhead, impossibly sharp in the dry air. There's no light pollution, no noise but the occasional nicker or snore. This would be a beautiful place to sleep if you weren't, once again, doing it while in transit. Someone passes a flask of air-egg fermented maize milk. It's tangy, a little fizzy, and surprisingly effective at warming the limbs. You take a cautious sip and instantly regret it, but you nod politely. When in Mongolia, you drift again, this time consciously, leaning forward on your horse's neck, trusting her step. It's not deep sleep, not even proper REM, but your mind quiets. Your thoughts become soft. Images flicker your horse's mane, the curve of the horizon, the rhythm of hooves like a lullaby made of muscle and dust. There's a strange kind of peace in this sleep. No alarm clocks, no bedsheets, just the road and the rhythm. Mongol warriors didn't need mattresses. They needed movement. It's a lifestyle built on motion, resting not in stillness, but in repetition. You wake to the rustle of movement. Riders forming again. Someone yawns and remounts. A few brush dust off their armor, though frankly, that seems like a losing battle. Your own limbs creak as you rise. You slap your horse's neck in thanks, and she gives you a look that says, "Took you long enough." You ride on, eyes still heavy but spirit strangely buoyed. Sleep here is like seasoning sprinkled into life where you can find it, but never overwhelming the dish. Later that night, as the wind whistles across the grasslands, you realize you haven't laid flat in days. And yet you feel okay. Not well rested, not exactly, but rested enough. You've become part of the rhythm. You've learned to nap like a nomad, and honest. The sun rises over the steppe with an unforgiving brightness, no matter how little you've slept. There's no morning fog to hide behind, no cozy duvet to pull over your head, just cold air, horse breath, and the scent of last night's fire clinging to your tunic. You're not sure if you're awake or just continuing yesterday in a new shade of light. Today's excitement, bathing, sort of. You've been riding with these nomads long enough to notice something strange. They look surprisingly healthy. Their skin is dry but clear. Their hair shines despite the dust. and not one of them seems bothered by the lack of, well, indoor plumbing. How? You ask, and a herder shrugs. Horse sweat and sheep fat. Naturally. Welcome to the Mongol version of Spa Day. First, you watch a man rub his face briskly with a coarse wool cloth. No water, just friction. Then he scoops a bit of animal fat from a small pouch and smooths it across his skin like moisturizer. Another rider scrapes his teeth with a sliver of birchwood. No minty freshness here, just bark and diligence. A group of women gather nearby, combing their hair with carved bone combs. One of them sings softly, a tune you don't recognize, but which pulls the wind closer somehow. They rub their hands with fermented milk, chatting idly about a neighbor's wayward goat and the weather. It's not glamorous, but it's oddly intimate personal care without privacy, routines without walls. Mongol hygiene wasn't what you might call Western spa standard, but it wasn't absent either. Contrary to myths that nomads never bathed, they had smoked baths. Khans and commoners alike would sometimes steam themselves inside yachts, pouring water over hot stones and sweating it out in the dry, contained heat. You're told the smell is something between mutton stew and armpit sauna. Tempting. They also used wool cloths to rub themselves clean, often dry scrubbing instead of washing. Given that water wasn't always nearby and rivers were often frozen, this made perfect sense. Bathing daily in a snow-fed stream is a great way to not wake up the next day. Still, there's debate among historians about how frequent these bathing rituals were. Some accounts by travelers like Marco Polo described Mongols as fastidious in certain ways, especially before handling food or after rituals. Others, particularly Chinese chroniclers, painted them as earthy at best and offensively unwashed at worst. Truth, as usual, is likely somewhere in the smelly middle. Today, you try your own version of the step spa. You're handed a horsehair cloth coarse as sandpaper and shown how to scrub your face vigorously until it tingles. Then comes fat, which you hesitantly smear across your cheeks. It's greasy, but warm, and surprisingly effective. Against the wind's bite, you glance at a metal mirror, a small polished disc, and see your face shining faintly. Not clean in the conventional sense, but protected, softened. You look like someone who might actually belong here. Later in the afternoon, a cloud of dust on the horizon signals approaching traders. They arrive with strange treasures: silk from China, spices from India, soap from somewhere far west. The Mongols examine the bars curiously, but seem unimpressed. Why smell like flowers when you can smell like horse? Someone jokes, and they all laugh. You think about your home shower: hot water, citrus shampoo, 7 kinds of conditioner. And yet, there's something grounding about this rougher ritual. You feel more awake, more real. There's no scent to cover up who you are. You are sweat, dust, wind, and wool. You are now part of this land. One old man, his braid streaked with grey, insists on giving you a final touch. He dips a finger in a bowl of fermented mare's milk and dabs it behind your ears like perfume. For luck, he says. You nod, unsure if he's joking. Probably a little. Night falls again. As you roll out a thin felt mat by your horse, you reflect on the day. You didn't touch a drop of water, but somehow you feel refreshed. Not clean, perhaps, but purified in some elemental, windswept way. Your skin itches in a few places, but that just means it's working. The stars emerge slowly, their light muted by the pale smoke still curling from the cooking fire. You lie back and inhale deeply smoke, horse, wool, and earth. The scent of survival. You imagine going back to your apartment, showing up at a fancy gym smelling like lamb fat and fermented milk. You'd be asked to leave, no doubt. But maybe, just maybe, you'd feel freer. Daughter as sleep crawls in again. You remember the woman rubbing her hands with milk, the children being dusted clean with ash, the old man's cracked laugh. This isn't a world without hygiene. It's a world where the rituals are shaped by necessity and nature, not Instagram or bath bombs. You scratch your cheek. The fat has settled in. Your skin feels oddly supple. You're starting to understand. On the step, rest doesn't come from spa days and thread counts. It comes from rhythm, from simplicity, from adapting to the land instead of fighting it, and maybe. The fire has died down to a flicker, and the wind outside your gear has calmed to a low whisper. You're already half asleep when someone's foot gently kicks yours. Then another. Then a goat bleats, far too close to your ear. Welcome to bedtime. In a Mongol household where personal space is more of a suggestion than a rule, tonight, like every night, the gear is packed. Let's take inventory, shall we? To your left, 3 children rolled up like dumplings in felt blankets. One of them, occasionally kicks in his sleep, and he talks to his imaginary horse, who's apparently late for a race. To your right, an elderly aunt muttering softly into her sleeve, offering some kind of prayer or perhaps just arguing with herself about who forgot to seal the milk pot. Near the door, a pile of armor, saddles, and one pair of boots that definitely still contains feet. Somewhere in this room, a rooster is perched. And yes, across your chest is a warm, slightly snoring goat. It's not glamorous, but it works. The Mongol gear, also called a yacht, is a marvel of portable engineering. Made from latticed wood walls and covered with thick felt, it's circular, collapsible, and shockingly warm even during a steppe winter. In this small space, everything has its place, and nothing is wasted. But beds, not a thing. Instead, Mongols sleep on layers of felt or wool rugs, directly on the packed ground. If you're lucky, you get to borrow a saddlebag as a pillow. If you're really lucky, you don't wake up with a chicken feather in your nose. The idea of a private sleeping chamber is so foreign here it might as well be Martian technology. Yet somehow, despite the chaos, you sleep. Maybe it's the rhythm of breathing around you. Maybe it's the way the fire's warmth lingers in the rugs. Or maybe it's just exhaustion from riding all day. You nestle deeper into your little spot. Goat and all. You remember something, eh? Young herder told you earlier. We don't sleep alone because the world is big. Too big for one dream. Poetic. Sure, but also practical. The gear is both a home and a defense system. In this wide, open steppe, unity is survival. And snuggling up together under shared blankets. That's just good logistics. Mongol families were often large and extended. Generations slept under the same roof. Newborns were swaddled and placed near the stove. Elders got the warmest corner. Visitors, like you, were tucked wherever they fit, often right next to the saddles or grain sacks. There's even a chance if you listen closely, you hear someone whispering lullabies to their horses outside. Historically, this tight cohabitation fostered strong family bonds. Children grew up surrounded by stories, chores, and the muffled, nighttime conversations of their parents. Romance happened too, but usually quietly, and with the gentle shuffle of trying not to wake the whole house. There's a fringe theory among steppe historians that romantic discretion was the origin of the famed Mongol soft steppe, though, to be fair, that might be a joke. Still, historians argue whether this communal style was entirely idyllic. Some suggest it blurred boundaries in uncomfortable ways, while others point out that in such harsh conditions, privacy was a luxury no one could afford. Either way, you quickly realize that modesty has a very different meaning out here tonight. Someone rolls over and half covers your foot with their blanket. You don't move it. It's warm. Across the room, a toddler giggles in her sleep. Next to her, her grandmother snores softly. The goat shifts and settles again, apparently quite satisfied with your shoulder as a pillow. This may not be a king-size bed, but it has its charms. You start to recognize the subtle choreography of the GR. People move in their sleep, but in practiced, gentle ways. No one flails. No one hogs all the blanket. There's a mutual understanding. We are all here, together. And that's how we'll stay, above you. The smoke hole at the crown of the gear reveals a slice of night sky. Stars flicker through the opening, a reminder that the world outside is still vast and cold. But in here, the warmth of shared breath and tangled limbs makes it feel far away. Safe, you close your eyes again, allowing yourself to drift. Somewhere, you hear the creak of a saddle being checked. Someone must be preparing for a night ride. You wonder if they'll nap in the saddle, guided only by the horse's instincts. You envy them a little, and just before sleep swallows you, you make a You're up with the sun, or rather, with the noise of someone trying to quietly brush their hair, using a horse comb 2 feet from your head. The goat, mercifully, has departed. In its place is a bundle of sheepskin, which someone has tucked around your feet. Cozy, but temporary, because today is for flirting on horseback. You see, in Mongol culture, the horse wasn't just for battle and travel. It was for courtship too, and marriage, and basically everything short of cooking stew. Though, let's be honest, if you gave a Mongol horse a ladle, it'd probably give it a shot. As you step outside, blinking in the light, you spot 2 teens in the distance racing each other at full gallop. Not just for fun, that's a flirt. A galloping, dust-kicking, giggling flirt. Welcome to love. Step-style. In Mongol tradition, romances. Kinetic. There are old customs still practiced in some regions today, where suitors show affection through equestrian games. One classic is KKBR, a sort of rugby meets polo sport played with a goat carcass. Romantic? Perhaps not at first glance, but strength, skill, and showmanship all go into the mix. And in these parts, the ability to scoop a dead goat off the ground at full gallop is genuinely impressive. Then there's the girl chase, kiz-kur in Turkic-influenced regions where a young woman is given a head start on horseback. Her admirer must chase her down and try to kiss her before the finish line. Fail, and he gets whipped. Win, and he earns a chance to court her properly. High stakes, high speed. Definitely not Tinder. Historians still debate whether such chases were symbolic or serious competitions. Were they playful rituals or actual trials of worthiness? The sources vary. Some call them games. Others suggest they had legal weight. Either way, you're left wondering how anyone managed to flirt without falling off a horse. But Mongols were raised in the saddle. Even marriage proposals happened on horseback. There are tales some true, some probably stretched of couples exchanging vows mid-trot. Weddings were communal events, often involving a shared feast, gifts of livestock, and elaborate toasts of arrack, that delightfully fizzy mare's milk you're still not entirely sure you like. And if you think wedding nights were spent in a cozy bed under a canopy of roses, sorry, try a felt blanket under a sky full of stars, with your horse snuffling nearby. Maybe another goat. One charming detail: horses were often part of the dowry exchange. A suitor might offer several prize horses to the bride's family, a gesture of both wealth and respect. Some clans even held horse races during the wedding. Imagine saying "I do," then racing your cousin for a celebratory gallop, and it wasn't just the young folks. Mongol epics are full of stories about widowed warriors remarrying in later life, often to allies or friends of fallen comrades. Love, like everything else on the steppe, was fluid, mobile, and always a little unpredictable, of course. Not all matches were made from mutual attraction. Arranged marriages were common, especially among noble families. Strategic unions helped forge alliances, keep peace, or expand influence. But even in those cases, horses remained central both in ceremony and symbolism. There are even records of wedding horses being painted or decorated to reflect the new couple's status. You're starting to see a pattern here. Horses are everywhere. And beds? Nowhere. If a Mongol couple wanted a romantic evening, they either waited until the gear cleared out or made do with the saddle blankets and the nearest quiet patch of grass. Intimacy, like sleep, was flexible, improvised, sometimes hilariously so. One fringe account possibly exaggerated mentions a noblewoman who insisted her lover caught her from horseback for 30 days straight, without ever dismounting. He reportedly completed the challenge by sleeping in the saddle, eating in the saddle, and even composing poetry while trotting. That, my friend, is dedication. Or madness. Possibly both. You mount your horse now, adjusting the reins. A girl from the next camp rides past and smirks at you. You nod back. There's a pause. Then, with a grin, she kicks her horse into a gallop. Challenge issued. You hesitate for half a second, then lean forward and ride. The wind tears at your sleeves. Your horse's hooves thunder across the open plain. She's just ahead, laughing, daring you to catch up. The herd on the horizon scatters. A hawk wheels overhead. Your heartbeat rises not from fear, but from the thrill of motion, of chase, of something ancient and almost wild. You never quite catch her, but you also don't fall off. So, win-win that night, back in the gear. Someone passes you a wooden bowl of arrack and raises their eyebrows meaningfully. You shrug. Who knows? Maybe that was a date. And when you settle down to sleep again, this time without a goat, you think about how love, for the Mongols, was rarely candlelit or scripted. It was dusty, fast, breathless. You had to keep up or be left behind. You wake to the sound of rhythmic breathing. No, not yours. It's your horse, curled up beside the gear like a giant living furnace. Its sides rise and fall steadily, and in the Pyoidon hush, it almost sounds like the heartbeat of the land itself. By now, it's clear. These animals aren't just vehicles. They're spiritual beings, companions, symbols, some would say, sacred. You rub your eyes, stretch your stiff limbs, and step into the morning light, where an elder is sprinkling fermented milk onto the earth, whispering something to the sky. Welcome to the spiritual heart of Mongol life. Long before alarm clocks and coffee routines, Mongols began their days with offerings to Tengri, the eternal blue sky god, and to the spirits of the steppe. Tengriism, the PI Buddhist belief system of the Mongols, was built on balance, nature, and reverence for the forces that govern the world above and below, and right at the center of it all, horses. You walk beside your mount, fingers trailing. Its thick mane, as the elder explains that horses weren't merely useful, they were believed to have souls. Some clans believed horses could carry messages to the spirit world. Others thought certain horses, especially white ones, were divine emissaries. Historians still argue whether these beliefs stemmed more from practical dependence or deeper cosmological worldviews. Either way, they shaped how Mongols saw life. Death and everything in between need to blessin' your journey. Pour Eric on the ground and whisper to your horse. Feeling sick? A shaman might use a horse's mane in a healing ritual. Think your dreams are haunted? Better sleep near a horse skull, yes, really. It's not exactly feng shui, but it might. Keep the night demons at bay, and when a horse died, it was often mourned with more ceremony than some humans. Mongol warriors were known to weep over fallen steeds, even composing poems in their honor. Horses were buried with honor, sometimes in miniature tombs, sometimes cremated, sometimes released back to the steppe in elaborate farewell rites. There's a haunting tale, half legend and half history, of a famous Mongol general who had his horse buried upright, fully saddled, facing the rising sun, ready to carry his master's spirit into battle, should the heavens ever call. Whether true or not, it tells you something about their bond. Inside the gear, religious symbols hang near. The central hearth, felt cutouts of suns, moons, and the wind horse, an abstract emblem of spiritual energy. You are told not to point your feet toward the hearth when you sleep, and definitely not toward the altar. Beds, again, don't really factor in. Spiritual alignment does. You are offered a cup of warm tea. The elder gestures for you to sit, and begins chanting in a low, rhythmic voice. You don't understand the words, but you feel them a lulling, looping sound that rises and falls like the wind sweeping through the grasslands. The Mongols believed dreams could be more than just subconscious fluff. Some dreams were omens, others warnings, still others might be messages from ancestors, or echoes from past lives. The gear wasn't just a sleeping space, it was a liminal zone where waking and dreaming blurred. And if you dreamed of horses, that could mean power, or loss, or longing. It depended on the dream. Mongol shamans were the ones tasked with interpreting these nocturnal riddles, often using drums and chants to slip between realms, seeking answers where none were obvious. You ask the elder about death. He points to the horizon. When we die, he says slowly, our horses led us across the wind. You try to picture it. A vast procession of souls galloping across the afterlife, hooves barely touching the earth, eyes fixed on some celestial pasture beyond the clouds. No gold gates, no angels, just sky, silence, and speed. Even burial customs reflect this skyward longing. Important figures were often buried in secret tombs with their favorite horses. Genghis Khan's own burial site remains undiscovered, its location hidden, possibly guarded. Some say by the very mounts that once carried him across empires. A fringe account, whispered but never confirmed, claims that the men who buried him were trampled by horses afterward to protect the secret. Others say the earth itself swallowed him whole, horse and all. Sleepy bedtime story? Maybe not, but it does have that oddly comforting epic vibe. You wander back to your horse and press your forehead against its neck. The warmth, the pulse, the quiet breath. For the Mongols, this wasn't just affection. It was connection. You've ridden, slept, eaten, and nearly fallen in love on horseback by now. But this is something different. You are starting to feel what they felt. That horses weren't just useful animals. They were thresholds. Between worlds. Between waking and dreaming. Between now and forever. As twilight descends again, and the camp prepares for rest, the elder lights a small incense bowl and sets it near the gear's opening. The smoke rolls upward like a signal, faint, slow, sacred. You lie down, not in a bed, obviously, but on a folded woolen mat, your saddle close by, your horse just outside. The stars blink into view, endless and unblinking. You imagine your soul, one day, galloping with the wind, your steed sure-footed and strong, guided by spirits, blessed by sky, and then you wake in a swirl of wind and dust. The gear creaks as a gust rips past, flapping the felt walls like sails in a storm. Outside, the sky is a dull, storm-tinted yellow, the kind of light that makes the world feel a little sideways. The air smells of dry grass and lightning. Your horse is already restless, stamping its hooves nervously, nostrils flared. Welcome to a steppe storm. You pull your deal tighter and squint into the wind, pushing open the flap of the GR. Dust stings your eyes immediately.
The world is vanishing in waves of airborne soil like standing inside a shaken snow globe. Except the flakes scratch your face and coat your teeth in grit, and yet no one else seems panicked. An old woman calmly tightens the guy ropes on a neighboring GL.
A boy runs laughing into the storm, chasing a runaway felt hat. Horses huddle together, heads down, tails turned to the wind. Mongols have weathered this forever. There are no evacuation orders, no emergency shelters. You're already in the
only shelter that matters. Still, sleep seems impossible.
There's no warm bed to retreat into, no soft walls to muffle the howling.
You lie down on your mat, eyes wide open, listening to the airy chorus of wind, creaking ropes, and distant animal calls.
You try shifting positions, wrapping fur over your head, even counting the flaps of the gear like sheep.
Nothing works, which
raises the inevitable question. Why don't the Mongols just build proper houses, or at least invent a real bed?
Historians still argue whether their nomadic lifestyle was driven purely by the needs of their herds, or whether there was a cultural reluctance to settle down. Some think Mongols saw permanent structures as a kind of spiritual trap too.
Grounded to fixed. Others point to the practical. You can't move stone houses with ox carts, and you can't follow your herds if you're nailed to a bed frame. Either way, beds remain foreign. Even royalty preferred thick rugs and padded mats inside lavishly decorated gairs. The very concept of a raised sleeping platform seemed unnecessary, maybe even a little suspicious. After all, what's the point of climbing into a bed when you
can just lie wherever your horse stops?
And so you endure the storm the Mongol way, flat on your back, eyes half shut, letting the dust drift over you like a blanket woven from the earth itself. Later, once the wind calms, you stumble out for water and find a small group gathered around a fire.
Someone hands you a hot stone, yes, a literal stone that was heated in the embers and wrapped in cloth. It's surprisingly comforting against your palms, like a primitive hot water bottle. You lean against your horse, who nuzzles your shoulder,
and finally feel your body begin to settle again. That's when you notice the faces, not the people. The talismans, small carved faces dangle from strings near the doorways of several gears made from bone, wood, or even horsehide. Some are smiling, others grimacing. They're storm spirits, someone explains. Protective charms. Mongol families believe they help chase away bad dreams, illness, and mischievous forest demons who might sneak in during a storm. You nod, not quite sure if you believe it, but after last night's insomnia, you're willing to try anything. Someone offers you a bowl of thick broth mutton, mostly with mystery vegetables, and the unmistakable tang of horse fat. It's warm and grounding.
You feel it settle in your belly like a soft anchor.
For all the discomforts of steppe life, Mongols knew how to keep bodies going. Warmth, fat, rhythm, and rest, even if that rest was carved from the middle of chaos. And
then, without warning, the old man next to you falls asleep, just
folds into himself like a paper crane, cross-legged, eyes shut, mouth slightly open, still holding his bowl.
The fire crackles softly beside him.
No bed, no mat,
no ceremony,
just sleep when it comes. You blink. That's impressive. Turns out, Mongols didn't chase sleep.
They welcomed it when it arrived, wherever it arrived. Napping on horseback?
Sure. Dozing upright in a saddle? Done. Collapsing mid-meal? Apparently acceptable. For people who live by movement and instinct, sleep was just another rhythm of the land, a tie to be respected, but never forced. You start to admire that dotted home. Maybe you needed your blackout curtains, your memory foam pillow, your noise machine with 12 rainforest settings. Here, you've learned to sleep on wool. In storms, next to goats, beside strangers, and under skies that don't end. You remember your first night on the steppe, when your back ached and your brain wouldn't turn off. Now, despite the storm's aftermath, you feel something new, resilience. Your body has adapted. Your expectations have shifted. No, you still wouldn't call it comfortable, but you understand it now. The quiet defiance of it. The elegance of sleep without architecture. Later that night, you finally collapse beside
your horse, both of you bone-tired.
The earth is firmer than any mattress. The wind has faded to a breeze. Somewhere nearby, a lullaby is being hummed soft, slow, ancient. You shut your eyes, letting the dust settle around you like a second skin. This time, the dawn begins not with sunlight, but with hoofbeats. You stir as a soft thunder builds across the plain, steady, rhythmic, like a distant drumroll growing closer.
It's not a dream.
You sit up, rubbing your eyes, and see them, riders in silhouette, galloping across the steppe in a slow-motion wave, their long braids flying behind them like dark banners. Your horse whinnies softly, as if saying, "Get up. It's time. Today is different." You feel it in the way people move, more hushed, more focused. The gears are being packed methodically. Saddlebags are loaded, flaps tied shut, wheels checked. No one lingers over tea or sings while grooming ponies. Even the goats seem unusually quiet. Someone tells you, in a whisper, a family member has died, and so begins the long ride home, not for the living, but for the dead. In Mongol tradition, death was not an abrupt ending, but part of a journey. And that journey was, of course, taken on horseback. Horses carried warriors into battle. Yes, but they also carried souls into the next world. Some clans believed that a spirit could not find peace unless their favorite mount went with them. Whether symbolically or literally, historians still debate just how widespread horse burials were. Some graves reveal full horse skeletons alongside human remains. Others suggest symbolic practices, like burying only a horse's bridle or hair. Still, others argue that such practices were more common among aristocratic Mongols and rare among everyday herders. Either way, the belief remains. A Mongol's final journey must be mounted, and so today, the entire camp will ride. You're handed a sash of white silk, a mark of mourning. It flutters in the breeze as you help tie it to a horse's mane. The animal chosen was the man's favorite. Short but muscular, gelding with alert eyes and a dappled flank. Its saddle is empty now, but not for long. The procession forms quietly. Dozens of riders in single file, facing west toward the land where the sun disappears. You mount up and join them, feeling the reverence in the silence. The only sound is the breathing of horses and the gentle clink of metal stirrups. This is no gallop. It's a slow, meditative walk, one that might last hours or, in some cases, days. As you ride, you begin to notice things. Tiny offerings along the path stones, stacked 3 high. Bits of cloth tied to shrubs, a spoon wedged in a tree. These are ovos, sacred markers left for the spirits. You're expected to circle each one clockwise 3 times before continuing. Some riders dismount to add a stone. Others whisper short prayers to Tengri, the eternal blue sky. There's no church, no tombstone, just endless land, and the understanding that somewhere quiet, somewhere high, the soul will find its rest. Eventually, the caravan halts near a craggy rise on the open steppe. It's time. No markers are left. No graves dug in plain sight. Traditional Mongol burials often aim to obscure the body's resting place completely to let it vanish back into nature. Some accounts speak of secret burials, where even the mourners couldn't retrace their steps. The land would absorb the fallen as though they had never been dust to dust. Horse to wind, you dismount with the others and stand in silence. The horse is led a short distance away, then untethered. Whether it will be released, ritually killed, or simply used in a ceremonial way depends on the tribe's customs. No one speaks. The sky above is vast, pale, cloudless. A hawk glides overhead, and everyone seems to watch it, as if it might carry the soul skyward. After a while, the riders slowly turn and mount again. No speeches, no sobbing, just the quiet acknowledgement that the world continues, and the living must keep moving. As you ride back, the saddle feels different, heavier somehow. You think about all the weight Mongols carried with them, not just the practical burdens of travel, but the spiritual ones. Horses weren't just transport or tools. They were companions, mirrors, and in the end, they were bridges between this world and the next. Later, someone tells you about wind burials, a practice where the body is left exposed to the elements, especially among some Mongol shamans and nomadic tribes. The belief was that sky spirits would carry the soul away, and the earth would reclaim what it lent. In O2. No coffin, no bed, just the wind, the horse, and the sky. That night, back at camp, there is no feast, just a quiet meal of broth and dried curds. Someone tells a story about the man who died. Nothing grand, just how he once sang to his horse during a thunderstorm. Everyone chuckles softly. Then, as dusk settles, the gear fills with silence again. You lie back on your mat, won from the ride, but oddly comforted. There's something deeply honest about the Mongol way of death. No need to dress it up, no need to fear it. You ride, you live, you ride again, and when the time comes, your horse will know the way. Outside, the horses shift and breathe in their sleep. You wonder what they dream about. Long grass, open skies, the warmth of a rider's legs. Whatever it is, it must be peaceful. You close your eyes, picturing the long procession again, the quiet hoofbeats, the swaying manes, the white silk,
fluttering like wings, and for a moment you wake briefly to the creaking of leather straps and the soft snort of a horse somewhere nearby. Not your horse, but someone's.
The night wind pulls at the sides of the gear, rustling the felt walls like breath.
You stay still, wrapped in a sheepskin blanket, wondering how you'll ever return to the softness of a mattress after this. But don't worry, beds still exist. You just might be a little less impressed with them now. Out here, the land is the bed. And for the Mongols, the idea of rest was never about sinking into softness.
It was about adaptability, resilience, and the peculiar comfort of motion.
A Mongol could sleep standing up with one leg in the stirrup and the other dangling, rock gently with the rhythm of a trotting horse, or catch a few hours of real sleep curled in a corner of a packed gear, surrounded by siblings, saddles, goats,
and the lingering scent of mutton. And when sleep was impossible, well, there was always fermented mare's milk. It does wonders for forgetting how much your spine misses a mattress. The Mongol Empire didn't expand by lounging around. These
were people born into motion, raised in wind, toughened by a land that offered no softness and expected none in return.
Beds were fine, but horses were everything. They were transportation, weapon, heater, milk machine, and mattress all rolled into one shaggy, unpredictable, four-legged miracle. Historians still debate how the Mongols managed to cover
such vast distances with such speed.
Was it purely their military discipline,
their relay post system, or was it the near telepathic relationship between horse and rider?
Some scholars even argue that Mongol endurance had less to do with numbers or tactics, and more to do with what you now understand firsthand, the ability to find rest. Real rest anywhere, even mid-gallop, even without a bed. It's not just Genghis
Khan and his generals who deserve credit. It's the shaggy steppe ponies smaller than you'd expect, tougher than they look, horses that could survive blizzards, scale mountains, and gallop for days on nothing but grass and grit. Horses that didn't mind if you slept on their back or leaned against them for warmth at night. Horses that were, by all accounts, smarter than some emperors and more loyal than any bedframe. You remember one rider telling you, without irony, a good horse knows when you're too tired to stay awake.
They'll carry you anyway. It was never about falling asleep. It was about not needing to stay awake. Even today, nomadic families in Mongolia still favor the horse over the bed. Many children learn to ride before they can read. Their lullabies aren't about dreams in a crib, but of open skies, loyal mounts, and summer grass. And maybe that's why you're still here, nestled in this gear, eyes drooping, heart strangely full. You've eaten the dried curds. You've
tied your sash. You've sung softly to a horse with a braided mane under a sky so wide it makes your ceiling at home feel claustrophobic. Tomorrow, you will leave. You'll return to screens, traffic, pillows that remember your shape, but a part of you will stay behind, looped into the steppe wind, galloping quietly alongside the riders of a people who didn't just ride horses.
They became them. Your breathing slows. The gear creaks again, just once. A horse shifts outside, and you feel it in your ribs. You understand now. Beds offer bodies, but horses offer souls. And now, as the journey settles and your breath finds its rhythm, let the last embers of the fire fade in your mind. Imagine the steppe beneath a blanket of stars, no cities, no sirens, just the hush of open earth. The grass sways in slow, sleepy ripples, and somewhere in the dark, a herd of horses grazes by moonlight. Their hooves make no sound. Their warmth lingers in the night air. You lie back, not on a mattress, but on tightly packed felt rugs. A sheepskin cradles your shoulders. The smells are strange smoke, wool, leather, but comforting now. A gentle wind strokes the side of the gear like a lullaby.
There is no pillow, but you're not uncomfortable. You hear the breath of the animals.
Calm and even, and somewhere, a low, contented whinny. You are safe. You are warm.
You've travelled far across centuries, across continents, and yet, here you are, whole and still and gently tired. Let your thoughts drift like dust along the road, no need to chase them. The fire has burned low. The horse is
resting.
The world has softened.